Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Breakthrough Blueprint, where we talk to entrepreneurs about how they became successful today. And I have with me my amazing friend, Remy, and I'll hand it over to him to introduce himself.
Hi, Mel. My name is Remy, and I run and operate bars around the world. So we have two in London, two in Paris. We have a distillery in Lyon. We have a small bar in Bordeaux, and we're about to open a few more. One in Latin America, I believe, and maybe a restaurant somewhere else. And on the side of this, I do a lot of fun stuff where I work for different spirit brands to, I guess, try and understand what they want and communicate with people. But more than anything, I guess my background is that I'm a bartender and I come from to spend the past 20 years, I guess, working in bars. And before this, my passion, and I guess still today, is in art and philosophy. So I kind of try and merge what I'd like to get good at, which I guess is understanding the reason why people do the stuff they do when it comes to art and philosophy, and the thing that I've gotten to be better at, which is, I guess, to serve people in an environment that makes sense.
Amazing. Wow, that's incredible. I am so impressed. So I guess how did you even get started in this industry in the very beginning?
So I started I guess like most people, I guess it was just a bit of a something to just pay the bills. So I studied philosophy. As I said, it was the only thing that I was interested in. And as I was studying, I just had to get money to pay for stuff. And then I guess in this moment, I worked in Irish pubs for 5 years. And I just realized that I kind of fell in love with the idea of serving people. And I felt like for me, I don't know if I was shy, but there was this thing from the hospitality sector where it was so easy to kind of disappear in within, like, you're surrounded by people, but just enough that you're safe and you don't really have to exist. So you kind of like, I love the idea of like just being there to serve a purpose. So it made me feel like I could be whatever they wanted me to be. And it was kind of awesome because at the same time, I felt this sounds so sad, but I felt like, I was part of the fun. I had friends, right? And so it was kind of cool because I guess ultimately my studies, excuse me, finished. And it's like, well, there's no job at the philosophy factory. So I better find myself a real job. And yeah, I decided to maybe try and make a career out of saving people and making sure that they were happy. And it's only so, as I said, 5 years of service. My original passion was certainly not in fancy cocktail world, but after time, I just decided that it was something that I'd have to learn. The same way you have to learn how to hold a tray and, I don't know, play two songs in the guitar in case the sound system breaks down. Then you have to read the newspaper because you want to chit chat with someone. There's so many different things that make you a good professional, and cocktails were part of it. And then I found that it is kind of awesome to be able to use, I guess, my brain and my hands to try and like make things taste nice. Yeah, I guess.
Wow, that's amazing. And so it's interesting because, I don't know a ton about this world. I'm learning more, and because I've been spending more time in Mexico City, I was lucky enough to meet Eric Van Beek, and he was the one who told me that you have basically, laid the foundation of what minimalist bartending is today. And I'm so glad that you're joining me here today so I can actually talk to you directly about it. But I'm curious, like, how did that come about? Like, how did you come up with that style?
So I think, and maybe it's not the should be a bit more self promoting, but I think that there's no. I feel like once you learn something, it's very hard to unlearn it, right? And I think that because my background is really into trying, when I talk like I say art, I'm not a particularly talented artist myself, but I'm really interested in history of art. And I think that
Mhm.
the fun stuff, I certainly didn't invite the idea of minimalistic bartending. The truth is that we probably are. I probably am the one that likes to put words into things. So I called it this because it made sense. And I feel like that's half the job, right? Or maybe it's even marketing. And even though we didn't see it like this, but for us, we want to say that the only goal is to somewhat be coherent, and all of our projects are different. So for example, in London, we explore the idea of minimalism and of functionalism because the venues are based on the Bauhaus, which is this art school, where it's somewhat open during the in between the two world wars in Germany. So in 1919, everybody's super excited. We're going to create what today is design. And I felt like it was super cool because, like, to study this, then we were able to understand a way of, setting up a bar and making sure the tables make sense, but also the playlist is important. And ultimately the drinks, what people are consuming is important. So I feel like I might have called it minimalist, and then the newspaper called it minimalist. And to this is what people would kind of associate with, but we didn't invent this style of drink. We just put the name on it. And by opposition, the first venue we opened in Paris is based on Art Nouveau, which is I guess, the polar opposite. And it's happening roughly, let's say, 20 years before. So it's not that much of a difference, but it's very ornamental. It's obviously like reintroducing nature after the industrial era. So you have a vision of, like how can art become some kind of a plaster towards this post-industrial depression. And so it's really, really different in style. And if you look at them, maybe one will look minimalistic and the other one wouldn't. But the truth, Mel, is that I don't think we know exactly what we're doing. We're just studying one thing specifically to understand what's the goal. So as I say, at the moment we have Bauhaus, we have Art Nouveau, we are flirting or we're touching on abstract art in two venues of mine, and then Art Deco will follow, and we'll keep on doing we'll keep on doing fun stuff. And again, for us, it's just the idea that it's more about the guest experience. Obviously, the guest is a lot more interesting than the hospitality industry or the bartending community. I feel like to go into a place and to have something that makes sense it's a very powerful moment to spend. And I think that ultimately that's maybe what we're looking after.
Mhm. Wow, that is so awesome. I love that art is such a big part of these concepts that you've built and that you're continuing to build. So for the difference between like the Art Deco bar, the Art Nouveau bar, like are there differences in the style of service and hospitality, or is it more just the decorations and ambiance and the drinks?
So yeah, I think that they're all trying to be. So I guess in the style of service, we will forever be trying to recruit nice people that kind of want to work hard. So I feel like there will always be a certain vibe that we'd like to take is the service that we enjoy receiving, and I feel like we're trying to share. But the idea of personal identity in within drinks making is not really the center of our company. So yes, there are distinction in design, there are distinction in drinks, there are distinction into the way that we will serve the drinks. In London, we on a busy night will make maybe 1,000 cocktail, and it's functional and it's efficient and it's very consistent. So this is why we have this huge factory on the side where we cut each of our ice cube and we make sure that the each of this is perfect based on the specific kind of drink that has to be served, because the bars wanted to, I guess, create beauty at a large scale. And again, by opposition, whenever we're going to go into, well, Nouveau and Deco are a very interesting one, because in terms of history of art, there's often misinterpretation of what they each are. But I feel like, yeah, if you go into Paris is 16 meters square. You can have like 12 people in there in Bar Nouveau. So of course we don't make 1,000 cocktail a night. And I feel like the interesting stuff, and maybe, sorry, I'm answering your previous question. For us, there was something really interesting that happened, I guess, in the history of drinks making, and I think maybe in food in general, food, drinks, actually maybe in most stuff. But for a long time, whenever like industries are quite young, there tends to be this somewhat like personal justifications. I am Remy, and therefore this, and I can tell you the whole story about me. And it will justify me serving you something because you, Mel, are coming to see Remy. And in terms of art, this happens for a long time where, if you have, I guess, Expressionism. And I think just before, so let's say in the 40s, 50s, you had this like abstract expressionism. I'm going to talk about myself, and you, the audience, you have to relate to it because, we're going to rely on empathy. You, Mel, are human, I'm human, and maybe there's similarities in our experiences. And I'm going to try and, I guess, make us connect this way. Well, the minimalists, they hated this. They just felt like it wasn't enough. It wouldn't make art good. And I think that in our
Mhm.
industry, it's not because your grandmother gave you a lemon and you make yourself an amaretto sour with it, that the amaretto sour will objectively be better. It doesn't matter. Your personal attached to stuff only matters to you. And whenever you make art, there's this idea of, you share, you try and relate to people. So whenever you say my grandmother gave me a lemon, therefore it made a great drink, the only reason I'm going to appreciate this is because I would refer to my own grandmother. But this doesn't have like beauty in essence. And the minimalists were really against this. And for us, it was interesting to see like the need for it is because at the time in the industry, you'd be like, okay, well, I'm from France and therefore I'm using Chartreuse and cognac, or I'm from Mexico and therefore I'm using tequila, or I'm from whatever. And you have all of these justification coming from I guess, who you are. Well, in reality, if you go to, you say you met Eric at a handshake, and Shake has got a 25 table. The guy at table 25 maybe doesn't care about, who you are, the bartender. And he shouldn't have to, because the place is enough. You don't need to look into personal justification to make something good. And so for us, it was very interesting. So I like the question because I'm in the middle of this Art Deco stuff at the moment. And it's really fun because when we think about art, we like to think of it as it's obviously a reflection on culture. And Art Nouveau happened just before Art Deco. And when you look at it, it's very easy to confuse them one for another because they're both very ornamental. And a lot of the artists kind of like did both just because and they didn't call it Art Nouveau and Art Deco at the time. It was just the modern style, right? Or in Spain or in Barcelona would be like a Catalan modernism, I guess. And then you just do modern stuff, right? But what's interesting in between the both of them, and we can now look in hindsight, I guess 100 years later, is to see
Mhm.
that Art Nouveau was just before the First World War, and Art Deco was just after. And the huge part of the difference was that nature was at the center of Art Nouveau, whereas humans were the center of Art Deco. And in everybody's
Mhm.
mentality was the fact that nature didn't win the war, humans did, machinery did. Like it's quite a an imposing movement, Art Deco. It wants to be impressive but not beautiful. It needs to be.
Mhm.
I mean, it's still really, sorry, suddenly aiming for aesthetics. I apologize, but there's this idea of, is the repetition of forms. You're going to celebrate the great civilization, the Egyptian, the Greeks, the Roman, and you have this, like, it's quite masculine, it's quite powerful. Whereas Art Nouveau, by opposition, there's only female augmentative figures, and it's kind of, yeah, it's super interesting because we confuse that. Now, what it means in terms of drink is very interesting because we need to understand why people were doing this from a societal point of view in order to be able to transmit this in within a bar experience, which is kind of cool and fun.
Mhm.
Yes,
Amazing.
I
Wow. I
apologize.
love
Sorry.
that. No, no, that's amazing that you're so informed and educated in art. That's so and from your background, I mean, I've only been to Paris once, but there's so many incredible museums there and art and architecture and history are preserved so well. And that's also one of the reasons why I love Mexico City for those same exact reasons. And now that I'm learning more about this industry and like the artistry, the culture, the thought that goes into everything, and it's just cool to see you and Eric and so many people sort of become, public figures and travel around the world and do these like competitions and demos and everything. Like, can you talk about how you were able to become like a brand ambassador and how you chose to work with these specific brands that you're working with?
So I think that there's so sorry, just to go back into what you're saying in Paris, and I feel like if this is a
Mhm.
not a business podcast, but there's this idea of how to be, I guess, how to be clever, even though I felt like it was very unintentional. Paris is the most visited city in the world, I think, touristically. As in, people
Mhm.
stop in Paris, and people that stop in Paris are going to want to experience the idea of Paris, and oftentimes they would do a museum and they would understand a bit about art, and they would realize, oh my God, there's stuff that is very distinctive to Paris. Art Nouveau being one of them, alongside a few other cities. What we realize is that I have these millions and millions of tourists that have got money ready to spend. Opening a bar based on art in a city like Paris or in a city like London will somewhat give people the excuse of being like, well, let's go for a drink, but still we're going to, we're going for a drink, but really it's not about getting a nice cocktail or not about, getting tipsy before our date. It's actually to understand a bit more about the art environment. And this is the feedback that we get the
Mm.
most, is that people feel like these places have been here for centuries and they're somewhat part of the cities they're in. And I feel like this is awesome for us because obviously it's nice and flattering, but it also means that we can we can make a little bit of money out of it. The places are busy because it's full of the people that want to have a drink, but also want to have a drink, not thinking, okay, I can go to this Japanese bar, but I'm in Paris. Why not go into somewhere that like relates or like, I guess, honors the history of the city that we're in?
Mhm.
And then so for myself, I think it's because we always worked in bars, and I feel like there's a lot of external award system. You have the best bars, you have your whatever 50 best plus American awards plus French award plus something something something. And over the years, just people have given us a few of them. And I think that brands understood the marketing value of having, you know, key figures in within this industry. And they will just little by little try and invest a little bit in individuals for them to become somewhat ambassadors of the brand, whether it's written down or more like as friends or something. And then this will allow like a natural growth of the brand. So I feel like for us, I don't really know when it started. It just happened somewhat organically, where we just ended up doing stuff with brands, and they will end up, being able to support some of our projects. Because one glass can cost £200 if you make it done by a glass blower artist to do something super cool. And in reality, we can't afford half the stuff that we want to create for our guests. So brands will be kind of a nice platform for us to express our creativity, and at the same time, we be nice ambassador, whether we're conscious of it or not. All certain brands and I guess what they make.
Yeah, definitely. That's amazing. And it's cool to see that ecosystem around these like competitions and the award ceremonies and the content that's being made and storytelling behind it. Just because like for any industry now, media and a digital brand and presence is so important. So that's cool that they're honoring, the people that are able to actually give guests that experience, including these different brands and companies. Because I was talking to Claudia Cabrera, I don't know if you know her from Mexico
Of
City.
course.
She's a Fernet. She's talking about how she became a Fernet brand ambassador and got a Fernet coin just because she was just so passionate about the product. And they were like, why are you drinking so much Fernet? Or why do you serve it so much in your bar? And so yeah, it's just cool to see, industry pioneers, especially women like her being recognized on a global stage pretty regularly now. So that was really cool for me to see.
I think for sure, and I think she does a fantastic job. And there's just a lot of, there's a lot of us or them, like just a lot of people working super hard. And for sure, these award ceremony and this kind of stuff, it gives you like a little validation. And I think whether it's for yourself as an individual or for the team you work with, or if it's to impress your
Mhm.
parents, I half like maybe you call me in a good day, but half the time I think I'm too cool for awards. And then at the time, I remember that my mom tells her friends that I'm a world champion something, and it makes her happy. I think as long we're talking about the positive of it, as long as we all know that it's not real and that there's no best bar in the world, and if there's a best bar in the world, you and I certainly haven't been to it, and that cocktail don't make a bar, and that there's no innovation coming out of the industry, nevertheless, it remains extraordinarily important. We just have to be kind of like comfortable with the fact that all of this is, yeah, it's a gigantic farce, but it doesn't mean that we can have fun, right?
Definitely, completely. And I think obviously one of the huge upsides of it is like there's so much globalization. You're meeting all these people from these bars all over the world and traveling to different countries. Like all my friends who are in this scene have been everywhere. And it's really cool that they get those opportunities and then learn and get inspiration from other bartenders, bar owners, and other cultures. I guess for you, what have been some of your biggest inspirations and influences from other countries?
That's such a great question. I think so. If I was to go young, for me, it was when it was more. I guess it goes into the journey you have as I'm 36 now. I have two kids. My wife is from Venezuela. So I guess we're spending a lot of time thinking or going to Latin America as a whole. And she was in Colombia just before. And so the most recent person that because I think my wife and I talked about it yesterday actually. And it was like, do you know who does a great job is the guys at Alquimico. And I think it's very interesting. So in Cartagena, gigantic, you know, I don't want to say nightclub, kind of. On the top floor, there's reggaeton. It's all this incredible vibe. You have cool food, and there's all of this stuff. And if you don't know kind of the work that goes behind it, it's hard to be like,
Mhm.
this is an inspiration. You'd be like, this is a great nightclub, and everybody here is beautiful, and everybody's having a great time, and everybody's respectful and kind, and all of this is great. And then I think is when you look at what's being done at the back, and I feel like this is certainly an inspiration in terms of just people making the world a bit of a better place. I felt like this was somewhat impressive. And this is in this phase of my life is like, well, this couple, this team, this guy, Jean, whatever it is, they're just using a particular skill set they have, which is to make a great bar. And they're actually
Mhm.
investing into different communities. They built a school. There's this foundation they do, and it's like, well, that's awesome, and it's certainly inspiring. So I feel like this is super. It's amazing that people from our industry end up having not only the funds to do this, but you actually find them in themselves, to be doing cool stuff. So I felt like, yeah, this is inspiration. But then there's so many people that do. The thing is that there's so many things that make a bar great, or an individual like bartender, server, waiter, whatever it is, bouncer great, that it's really hard to quantify. And I feel like I keep on getting inspired just all the time. You visit like somebody that will have just a great style, like a sense of service, or somebody that walks fast and like, the tables like a snake and is kind of, there's all, yeah, you always, I guess, keep on being inspired, but it's true that, yeah, the latest one is people that actually use their power for good. I feel like it's certainly
Mhm.
something that I find inspiring, and I would like to be a bit more like this, I think, growing up.
I love that. That's amazing. Yeah, well, I'm curious, like, that's amazing that you're a father. Can you talk more about, like, how becoming a father and raising children has either, like, changed or inspired or informed how your, career journey has changed?
Yeah. Well, my eldest daughter is 10 years old. She's about to be 11. And my youngest is 1 year old. And she was 1 year old a couple of weeks ago. So I guess that I had my eldest when I was 25 and I was working as a bartender. And I feel like at 25, I don't know, maybe some people are a lot more mature than I am, but I only turned into an adult like 3 years ago. So I kind of grew up with her. Now, the fun thing was because of this particular relationship with information that I think I have and that we have collectively. is that I really like to understand the way stuff works. So using my eldest daughter as a tool to understand how flavor works was a huge part of I guess, me growing up as a professional. So there was all the reality of you go and you finish work at 4 a.m. and you still have to drop the baby at, at school at 8:45. This is something you can easily get over with. It's not the easiest, but I'm glad that I did it. And as I said, you feel like you create a special bond with your kid at this time. But yeah,
Mhm.
the opportunity to be talking to children when it comes to flavor and the way that we talk about it was for me fascinating. And I think that this is the kind of the work of a lifetime is to try and understand a way to intelligently describe what we experience. Because I find that if in our whole life, if there's one thing that we were just really criminally uneducated on was our relationship to taste, where you and I can describe, a banana and have they end up using the same words all the time. And yeah, and the same way, this is kind of stuff we do with kids, but it's part of our education platform for the bar. But it's like, okay, can you describe a pineapple to me? And most people would say, all right, well, I don't know, Mel, do you want to describe a pineapple to me?
Sweet, acidic, bright,
Yeah,
juicy.
yeah, okay, amazing. Well, I think it's great. Could you describe a passion fruit to me?
Passion fruit. Tart? Sweet?
No,
I'm
not
at a
that.
loss.
Yeah, no, it's cool. But I think that even without going into kind of 5 hours of this, I think that you realize a mango, well, it's kind of sweet, right? It's kind of juicy depending on it. And then you realize, well, what do these words actually mean? What does tart
Mhm.
mean? How is tart different than acidic?
Mhm.
Well, is it simply that perhaps acidic will associate with, I guess vitamin C as ascorbic acid or citric acid, and then perhaps start with more malic acid? Or is it just the fact that everything is kind of sweet and acidic, right? If I ask you a pineapple is sweet and acidic, a mango, well, it's certainly more sweet than acidic, but there's acidity. A passion fruit, well, is more acidic than it's sweet. Or, the big one is tropical. We love to use this, especially in continental Europe. It's like the
Mhm.
most famous drink is this Oasis tropical. What does it actually mean? Is a tomato tropical? And he's like, well, I don't know. If you ask most people, they would say a tomato isn't tropical. But when in fact, tomato is endemic to the north of Mexico, therefore lays in between both the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer, therefore is tropical. So the fun thing is that we use all these words and we don't really have access to actually what they mean. What does juicy mean? Is it, I think that it just relates to the fact that you're able to transform your solid into a liquid and therefore is the water content of the stuff you use. So there's just all these things that we use. Bright is something that has to do with, I guess, the amount of light that goes to it. So how would we say like this synesthetic language that we like to use? How do we
Mhm.
use it and what does it factually mean? So we're trying to separate all this and and I guess use very selfishly, I use my eldest, or I did in the past, and she's too clever to like just try and see how far we can push these ideas. And for years she had to taste stuff and she's not allowed to say what we like to call taste. So, sweet, sour, bitter, spicy, but instead she have to say, but it's vanilla and almonds and raspberry, or ultimately she will be saying it's limoen, the organoleptic compound that makes lemon what it is, but it is also present in pineapple and in lavender. So it's kind of fun because there's all of this education that has to be done when it comes to taste, and that the school sadly doesn't give us. And I
Mhm.
feel like, yeah. So this was a great positive of having a kid at a young age while working in bars. Yeah.
Wow, that is awesome. That's so cool. I'm also curious then, like, has that changed any way that you train and hire people? And also, in addition, what do you look for when you hire people?
I think it has changed the way we train people for sure, and it's a big part of our training course is this priming course where we taste stuff and we separate this taste and I guess this compound, this aroma we'd like to call in order to explain flavor as a combination of both. Hiring people, no, I think I always hire very I'm just trying to hire nice, hardworking people, and I feel it's not like the technical skills of our profession not particularly hard to achieve. There's only so much, there's only, if you have a not nice person, I don't want to say not nice, but just a grumpy person, it's going to be impossible to teach them how to be in a good mood. And I know there's no occasion in the world, whether I'm on a date with my wife or I'm with my mom or my sister or my friends, just I don't want to be around grumpy people, just really lame. So I feel like, yeah, nice people that are keen to work hard and to understand the systems and the way we like to work
Uh-huh.
is the kind of people we want to hire.
Amazing. That's awesome. And I know that you mentioned that you're opening was it a restaurant in Latin America? Can you talk more about that?
It's really early stages, but I think
Mhm.
I think we've always been looking, just thinking about what is our next, like life change. I feel like there's going to be a desire for my wife to go back to Latin America, in some ways, where people know how to dance salsa, because I'm only a yellow belt in salsa so far. But I think that also at the moment, it's just, yeah, there's just this desire. So it's not impossible. I'm looking very, very closely at Mexico City at the moment. And I feel I'm a couple of phone calls away to open something small. And maybe it's just more to support a friend into into his or her project. Maybe it's to do something
Mhm.
that like adds a little bit of myself. I don't know yet. But I think Mexico City is I want to say, it's a 60-40% chance it could happen,
Wow, that's amazing, and why Mexico City?
because it's awesome. Uh, I think I think just because it's just an awesome city.
Mhm,
Because I wanted to do something a couple of years ago in
mhm.
Mexico City, and it was true that it felt, yes, okay, great, another European guy, another European white guy opening something in Mexico City. And so then I find myself a Latina and married her. So now my last name is Savage Diaz, and so I'm credible for it, right? Sure, this is a joke. Sorry, I hope it comes across.
Hey, it helps. I mean, hey, if Eric can do it
No,
and
I
he
don't.
didn't marry a Latina.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. No, but Mexico has got such a heritage of incredible hospitality. It's still kind of accessible by, it's not, I would love to say it's my dream to do something in Caracas. And I feel like perhaps there will be a day for it, but there's some countries that are more inclined to receiving internet, and perhaps Mexico is a bit more there than other parts of Latin America.
Definitely. I mean, it's amazing to see how Mexico City has changed over at least the last, like, 7 or 8 years since I've been traveling there. Like, yes, there are a lot of businesses owned by foreigners or, joint ventures between foreigners and Mexicans that are opening up, but that's what the market is accepting and I think demanding of because there is so much tourism and for better or for worse, so much gentrification there. So I think that's great that it's providing more job opportunities. It's really stimulating the economy. It's promoted, I think, a heavier focus on safety, especially in Mexico City, just because of all of this attention and business and money flowing in. So I think it's sort of inevitable in this city and a lot of other cities around the world. But for you, I'm sure, and for so many of the other businesses there, like they do pay respect to the local community and culture and obviously hire from there and bring so much benefit. So
100%. I think that I completely understand. Generally, there's absolutely nothing that as I said, like I pull out of something being like, no, it doesn't feel like I'm either qualified at the time. And as I said, for me, the only reason to do it at the moment would not be, I'm not going to move to Mexico in my current condition. So I think that this is more to be supporting local actors than anything. And if there's some stuff that we do, at the same time, I say this, I'm calling you from East London. I own two businesses here. I'm in a neighborhood that is 100% Turkish, where British people are not investing. I feel like
mm,
this idea of the world is becoming more international. I do think that it's wonderful as long as it's done with respect and with, like, I guess, kindness toward each other's culture.
mhm,
It's only wonderful to be here in East London, where there's just so many different people owning different kind of stuff, and you get to have a very diversity is certainly wonderful in the way it works. And if the world is becoming smaller, it certainly has some negatives. But I'd like to think that talents coming from everywhere making a city cool is just not something we can be mad at.
definitely, definitely. And I'm curious, like I know that you have so many bars and business ventures already. Do you already have like investors that you can call upon, or and people that you work with whenever you want to open a new concept?
No, so we don't. It was a big part of our mentality is that we don't want to. I don't want to work with any investors. So
Mm,
for us, which sounds a little bit, there's this. We're lucky because our first project kind of worked, and I'm personally lucky because I get to generate revenue from doing other stuff in other industries. I work a lot in fashion, for example, at the moment. As you can maybe tell,
cool.
this is really fancy. All of our money goes into a pot where only people that are capable of cleaning the toilet and have done shifts with us, and for an extent, only people whose job it is ends up having shares into the projects that we do all together. And they'll report it in a way that I'm talking to you. I'm not I don't own more than 33% of any of my venues, but
Mm,
we're a group of people that met, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, or some others maybe only 5, 6 years ago, or some other maybe 2, 3 years ago, and we just put, I guess, the money we have together and all the money that we get doing different events. We just try and cleverly invest it into small things. Oh yeah, for us, there's no investors. I think we became our own investors just because the venues were quite successful. and he allows
Mhm.
us to have the creative freedom not to owe. And I'm saying this, we had gigantic failures. We had things that like cost us a lot of money and cost us a lot of effort and didn't really work out. And then suddenly you like back to square one because all the good you've done from one project is being taken by the other. But I feel like
Mm.
it just allows us to have, we're never going to be rich. Like we're not going to be to the point of, I don't own a car or house or anything. Everything is rented. But that's great because at least we don't have the kind of rich people telling us what to do. And I'm saying this, we're quite fortunate as well. So I don't want to sound like I'm lying, but yeah, there's
Mhm.
no investors we can call. They're only people that have worked with us. And I think that it's not impossible in the futures that will allow friends to be part of larger projects because we are meeting this ceiling there where we can only open very small bars. We could never open something, the amplitude of a handshake without, I'm taking an
Mm.
example of it's a large venture, right? This is not something we could do at our scale, but we can do loads of little small bars that end up working out okay. And therefore we can try and open more and more. And then I guess a lot of little kind of make a big. And it was a plan to open in New York for a while. And then you realize that, you can go to New York with, well, I have my little bar that makes this amount of cash. It means absolutely nothing because 1 month rent is the equivalent of 2 years rent in Paris. So you just
Mm.
realizing that scale suddenly matter in all of this.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I guess then what was the main motivation for operating this way? Is it just to maintain creative control and
Yeah, I think it's just because we have a lot of work, and I've worked in, I guess, street bars, and I work in street bars where ownership was really, I don't want to say not really, not clueless, but certainly wasn't exactly aware of what was done. And then I worked in five-star luxury hotel, and I realized
mm,
the positive impact of having large structures is that things are very streamlined and like mistakes are rarer. But we realize that we're just too busy to have time to justify ourselves, and this is
mhm,
like in hotels, following the steps is such a large amount of your job that then there's only however many hours in a day. You can't just add more. And if I have to spend half my time making sure that everybody feels safe with their money, then we won't have the time
mm.
to actually make them some money. And I think that for us, it was just a lot of frustration not being able to change a light bulb or order what I want. When I know like when we know we're right, like to have to go through hoops in order to justify it, by the end you don't even want to do it anymore because all the fun is gone.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. And I'm curious, just to wrap things up, like what are you doing in the fashion industry?
I'm just starting a position as executive mixologist for Prada globally. Do all of the F&B, all of the shows for Prada, Miu Miu, and all of this kind of stuff, which is a new full-time job for me. I mean, not a full-time job for me. But aside from this, I mean, I'm just starting. I've been doing this for 4 months. So again, don't post this today, otherwise I'm gonna get into trouble. Somebody will shout at me in Italian. But yeah, I think it's something that has always been interesting, and it started with the desire to make the uniforms for the people we work with. And again, as part of the concept being coherent, we wanted the uniforms to work with the place they're in. So you don't wear the
Mhm,
same stuff in a bars bar, in a minimalistic bar, and in a Art Deco bar. It doesn't make sense, right? And so starting from there, then I started to like did a small range of clothes in collaboration with a friend of mine. And now I'm starting to do this, and it's fun because I'm having to learn a lot. The people are extraordinarily talented and cool, and yeah, I've never realized so much that I need to only be wearing some incredible Prada pieces all the time and spend all my money. No, so yeah.
wow, that's incredible. I'm so amazed and excited for you. Honestly, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Mel, it was my pleasure. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. And for everyone else, please tune into the next episode of the Breakthrough Blueprint.